coming up on this week's episode.
But on this one particular day, I sat there, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't have any income, I just have a hope and a dream. And then you know what happened? The phone rang.
Hello and welcome to the Transformation Podcast with Metamorphic. My name is Jordan and I'll be your host as we interview team members and special guests to be inspired and empowered to bring transformation wherever we are. You can head to our website metamorphic.global for more resources and opportunities to bring transformation around the world. Welcome to the Metamorphic Zone, where we laugh at the impossible and then do it. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Transformation Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with the founder and CEO of Metamorphic, Lindsay Clarke. Lindsay, will you just introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, as you said, Jordan, I'm the CEO at Metamorphic and the founder. And my claim to fame is I have a family of 5, 1 wife, 2 grown-up boys who are 32 years of age, and a daughter who went to be with the Lord some 20 years ago. So that's the Clarke family, and we live on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, and obviously spend a lot of the time, all of us, traveling around the globe, doing everything Metamorphic.
It's great. So I want to know, Lindsay, what is Metamorphic?
Yeah, good question, Jordan. A lot of people can't even say the word, to be honest with you. In fact, if we had our time again, maybe we would have had a simpler name. But the word metamorphic means transformation, and I say that at the very beginning because that's what Metamorphic is about. It's about transformation. And so we are a church-based, Christian-based charity that is committed to bringing transformation to nations, to communities all over the globe, and to individuals as well. So for us, that's the core of what we do. And a big part of that, which no doubt we'll talk about at some stage during this time together, is the element of church planting, because we have a very firm belief that transformation comes when we plant kingdom churches that can absolutely explode in a community and help people at every level of society.
So to get more of an idea of the big picture, how did it all begin? Where did Metamorphic come from? In a way, how was it birthed?
Yeah, again, another very good question. It was birthed on the 1st of April 2002, and that was me sitting at a desk with a blank piece of paper and a pen and beginning to design what we would do. We'd had the dream for Metamorphic for many years previous to that, mostly as a result of experiences we have as leaders in the church where we'd had different styles. We'd actually used different styles to plant churches, initiate new churches in small and large communities. And we'd learned many things from that, as well as training church planters in other nations previous to this. And that was the culmination of it as I sat down that day, supported by Julia and my family, also a great friend of Metamorphic today still, but at the very beginning was my personal assistant back then, Kim Beltoski. And I remember we'd spoken so many times about the dream to plant 1,000 churches. And along with Kim and my family and another fellow who was an accountant who also was really encouraging me to step out into this. And we worked together at that very beginning to launch Metamorphic. So that was it. We didn't have any money. We just had a vision and a dream, and God began to provide. And so it actually leads to a very interesting part of this sort of, I guess, discussion. And that is, when you have a dream like that, how do you know whether to run with it? And the thing that we were all certain of is that God had spoken to us. But I remember it was pretty unnerving that first morning. I was unemployed for the first time in my life. I'd left school and I had a job, and I'd always gone from one thing to another, whether it was in church or as an entrepreneur. But on this one particular day, I sat there, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't have any income. I just have a hope and a dream. And then you know what happened? The phone rang. There was a man on the other end of the phone. His name was John. And he rang and he said, God spoke to me. And he spoke to me 9 months ago, and I felt moved back then to give you some money. And he said, however, every time I went to give you the money, God said, not now, not now, not now. And he said, and last night, I was in a meeting with some business people and I didn't bother asking God because he didn't want to give you any money, obviously. And long story cut short, he then heard from God, as did the other people in that meeting. And he rang me that morning and said, I have to give you $64,000. And as I hung up the phone that morning, had tears running down my face thinking this dream is going to become a reality. And then the phone rang again and it rang again. And it rang for 45 minutes non-stop. And then it did stop. And when I calculated what had been given, there was exactly $100,000 to begin the dream called Metamorphic. So that was the beginning. Day one was a miracle.
Incredible. So you mentioned about having a dream and when do you step out. Was there a specific moment that happened before all of this money came in that really led you to know that this is the time? Or was it just something where you went for it and then you saw the money come in after?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I had a word from God. I was very clear that God had spoken to me clearly about where we needed to go and what we needed to do. I wasn't comfortable because I'd been a pastor for 15, nearly 20 years before that, and I'd always had security in that. But now all of a sudden it was like Peter getting out of the boat and walking on water. It's okay to walk around with Jesus and see all the miracles, and that had been my life as a pastor. But now he was asking me to get out of the boat and walk on water. And so that day felt exactly like that. But what we have found, just in our personal lives as a family, but also at Metamorphic, is when God promises something, he always comes through. And I guess today, I say this to some of our team from time to time, it's almost like we're little kids. We're always surprised when God comes through. But we shouldn't be surprised because he always comes through. And that day was just one of many, many examples of the miraculous journey of Metamorphic.
Wow. And when you started, say if we go all the way back to the beginning, that day when you're starting with your pen and paper, what was going through your mind? What was, in a way, the aim of Metamorphic? What were you looking to do?
It was clearly to plant churches and to plant a different type of church. As I said before, I've been a pastor for many years and we'd had some successes and some failures. We tried different things and we never backed away from trying something new. And we'd learned a lot from that. And what I had really observed was that most churches were quite introspective and very focused on the Sunday service or the Saturday service, whatever it might be, focused on their building, their music, whatever it might be, and very much around a strong leadership style. And I'd been brought up in that. But I really believe that the church is more than that. The church exists for others. And as church leaders, our responsibility is not just to tell people what to do, but to actually empower people to be the best version of themselves. So that was what I had in mind as I was sitting there. And then I wrote down a number, and the number was 1,000. So our vision statement that we established on day one of Metamorphic was that we would plant 1,000 churches. And I thought people would be mildly excited by that because it's a big vision. And that, the truth was most of my friends who were also pastors laughed at me. And some of them even mocked me in a nice sort of Christian way. And the reality was no one really believed that we could achieve this. But I believed. And so did my family, and so did Kim, who was part of that early days in our team. And so we just put our faith together and we put our nose down. And there was no one on our team. We didn't have a team back then. I did all the training myself, and we went out and we chased down that first goal or that first vision of 1,000 churches.
And I know now a large part of what we do is train people, like you're saying, empowering people. What did it look like at the beginning? You talked about training. Has the training changed over time? Was there a specific way that you're training people at the beginning?
The framework for how we train people is exactly the same. The content, however, we've transformed as we've moved along. One, because we live in a different world now than we did 21 years ago. But also, we've learned more things, and we think that we're trying to train church planters to be flexible and adapt to new environments in their community. And that, by definition, means that we have to keep adapting as well. So we're going through a transformation process all the time in terms of what we train people in. But the key elements are still there. The key elements that we had were to teach people about 5 things. And the 5 things were about personal leadership. And that is based on the concept that I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. The leadership style, the leadership capacity is what is going to really frame the success of the enterprise that people are starting up. The second part was actually about planting churches. But what we didn't do right at the beginning was teach people the history of church planting or even methodologies. We wanted to empower people to do it their way and their context. So we spoke more about how to think, the difference between cave churches and kingdom churches, a lot more around how to develop culture in the church, and how to take something from vision to execution. So that was the second part. The third part was community development or connection. I believe that the church exists to impact the community. And so we teach all our church planters, and we did from day one, that they are the pastor of the community, not just a church. And so we've developed that whole concept of how to identify what's happening in the community and then work with the community, not telling them what to do, but partnering with them to get a great result. Then the fourth part of that was about starting a small enterprise. And the reason we did that from day one was we didn't want to create a burden where we had 1,000 churches planted and we have to try and pay those people, thus meaning we can't grow anymore. So we decided they would be, by definition, entrepreneurs anyway if they're starting churches. And so we helped them to start livelihood projects, which meant they were self-funding. And the beauty of that is, of course, that means they have high levels of self-esteem. They believe that they're actually solving issues. They're not getting handouts. And so that's created a great way forward. And the fifth thing we had from the beginning was a multiplication factor. So we always have taught people to plant churches that plant churches. So those 5 elements are still the same today, but how we actually go about that has changed dramatically. Even the time frame. We initially, our training program, our original boot camp went for 3 weeks. Now it goes for 10 days to 12 days. So lots of transformation and change over the time, but the basic principles are exactly the same as the 1st of April 2002.
I'm interested. Are you still in contact with any of the original 1,000 church planters? And do you have any stories from those who planted these churches?
Absolutely. I remember we use one nation as an example, the nation of Cambodia, and that was in the second year. It was in 2003, and we had a class there. I think there were 14 church planters. Normally, we train between 20 and 30, although historically we've had times where we've trained 70 and 80 church planters in one class. But we've learned not to do that anymore. We think the optimum amount is between 20 and 30. But this class in Cambodia, the first ever class, was 14 brilliant people, and one of them became the superintendent of the AOG in Cambodia, and he still is today as we do this podcast. Another one who I'll tell you his story, and he's a little bit of a poster child for Metamorphic, but when you say, do I still have contact with some of this original 1,000, whenever I'm in Cambodia, I travel the hour and a half to his village and have lunch at his house with him and his family. And his granddaughter today is actually part of our team. And no doubt you'll do a podcast with Nide, who's the granddaughter of a man called Pastor Kun. And Pastor Kun's story is quite a basic one, but it's a miraculous one. When I first met him, he was pastoring a church of 50 people, and the 50 people had been there in the church for around about 20 years. He hadn't grown the church. He couldn't shrink the church. He was a pastor of 50. And so anyway, during that time, he came along to the program. He said to me, honestly, I don't know why I'm here. I probably should retire. He was in his early 60s. But my son has encouraged me that I should come and that God's going to talk to me. So he came to the program, and very long story cut short, I remember on the third or the fourth day, his face changed. And it's like he had a revelation that this was not the end for him, it was the beginning. And he went back after the program and planted a second church, which grew very rapidly to 150 people. And he started a business, he was in the community helping people. And then the next year he came back to the training again. I said, why are you here? And he said, I want to sit and listen to this again. And he did this 3 years in a row. And I just love the heart of this man. And it's something we can all learn from. And here he was in his 60s. I was about 40 at the time. And he's coming and listening to a young guy. At the time, I had an earring and a ponytail, which in Cambodia made me look like a drug dealer, I think. But anyway, he kept coming back, and he's still a great friend today. You know, we absolutely love each other. If I don't go out to his village, he'll come into Phnom Penh just to meet with me, and we stay in touch loosely in between. But here's the end result, and this is the story, is that today he's got more than 130 churches, and he's got about 30,000 people in his network. He's got projects running in something like 30 schools. He's put wells in more than 100 villages. This is a man who builds bridges, builds roads, has great relationships with the people and the politicians, and is a true example of a kingdom church. So I've got lots of stories like that from the first 1,000, and it's really a great joy for me to see those people and see their continued success. Of course, he now is in his 80s and starting to slow down a little bit, but he's still very supportive of what we do and still sends new church planters to our program.
Amazing. What are we looking at next then with Metamorphic? We've hit 1,000. That was the original aim. What does the future look like now for Metamorphic?
Well, it's on our T-shirts, but no doubt we'll talk about this at some stage, but our next goal is 1 million churches. Now, to be clear about that, that's not our vision. The vision changed after we reached 1,000 churches. So back to the 1,000 churches just for one moment. We got to that in 2.5 years. And then I'm sitting there going, I need the same blank piece of paper and a pen again because we need a new vision statement. So the vision statement of Metamorphic is to be the largest, most influential church planting movement in history. And that's a very clear vision. Some people think that's a bit arrogant, a bit big, but I sort of argue with that. I sort of think, what's the alternative? We could have a vision to be the second largest, most influential church planting movement. So someone needs to be the largest and most influential, and we'd be happy if someone went past us at some stage. But we believe in the church, and that's the primary thing here. And so I don't want to put a limit in our vision statement ever again with a number. So 1 million churches is our goal, but our vision is much bigger than that. I won't rest until we have planted a church in every community on the planet, or somebody else has done the same. Every community deserves a church, a real church. It's a kingdom church that focuses on helping people, breaking poverty, helping people move forward, and also, of course, preaching the power of Jesus in the gospel. So what next? It's 1 million churches, and we're working on our strategy to make that happen right now. It will be a reality. There's no doubt in my mind.
So if anyone's thinking right now, why do we need more churches? Why 1 million churches, or even why Metamorphic? What do you have to say, or what would you have to say to someone asking those questions?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I can understand why some people would say, do we really need more churches? Particularly if you live in a community where there are lots of options and lots of churches. But I guess the reason I'd say we need more is that there are many parts of the world that don't even have one church. So firstly, in places where there are unreached people, or where you're talking about nations that haven't got a Christian tradition or background, there are thousands and thousands of villages that don't have a gospel witness. Just case in point, we were talking about Cambodia. Cambodia, we've seen about 1,000 churches planted there since we began. But there are still 10,000 communities, villages, some of them small, like only 150 or 200 people, but they don't have a gospel witness. They don't have a church. There's not even one church. There's no options. The option is you have to move somewhere else to even find out about Jesus. So I think there's a desperate need there. But even in nations such as Australia, where I live, there is a desperate need for more churches. But the key is it's got to be the right church. What we don't need is more churches that are focused on introspective views, where it's all about what happens on the Sunday. It's all about what I call the pop star culture, where it's about me, the leader. It's about me being on stage and being a singer, or me being on stage and being a strong leader. And I don't have any difficulty with those things, but that's not what the church is there for. The church is there to be a blessing to the community. And I think most people would understand and agree that we desperately need in this day, all over the world, developed countries, developing countries, Christianized countries, non-Christianized countries, we desperately need that type of church, what we refer to at Metamorphic as the kingdom church. And so that probably answers the question of why Metamorphic. And that is that at Metamorphic, we don't plant churches for statistics. The only reason we wear the T-shirt of 1 million churches is we want to know where we're going, and we've got to have some measures. But this is not about getting statistics for us. This is about helping every person on the planet. And so I think the only way to do that is to plant real kingdom churches that love their community and bring transformation in everything that they do.
Amazing. So how can listeners get involved? What's the next step?
There's lots of ways that people can get involved with Metamorphic. The obvious one is giving. And of course, with these sort of podcasts and when you're interviewing ministry people, they're always going to be asking for money. But that's not really what we're talking about here. I think giving is if it's just giving money, I think that's probably a waste, to be honest with you. I think giving is a lot more than that. It's about partnership. It's about people saying, you know what, I can be involved in church planting. Maybe I won't go myself, but I can invest, and I'm as much a church planter as the person that goes. We have a philosophy here at Metamorphic that, the people that pray, the people that give, the people that go are all a part of that church planting team. And so people can get involved by partnering, and they can also get involved by partnering in prayer. I mean, prayer is a powerful tool. And I think, and often I think it's great if people do both. In fact, we would be disturbed if people just gave money and didn't pray for the church planter that they were supporting. So that's two of the ways. Of course, people can get involved in practical ways too. We're always looking to expand our team. We need people that can help with various areas. We're trying to grow our creative team. We're trying to grow our admin team, and even our training team will grow as we move forward. So I think it's really about, one of the things we say at Metamorphic is, we don't want to dish jobs out to people or just give people opportunities to be pigeonholed. We try to connect with people, and so if they want to get involved, they contact us. We build relationship. We do that even with the people that financially support what we do. They're not just people that send anonymous amounts of money. They're people that actually build in and live and breathe the vision of Metamorphic as well.
It's brilliant. Lindsay, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I look forward to the next episode with you.
Great. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Transformation Podcast with Metamorphic. Make sure to head to our website, metamorphic.global, where you'll find resources to empower you, as well as opportunities through partnership to bring transformation to the world. Follow us on social media. All the links will be down below in the show notes. Thank you for listening.